In the halls of the county's psychiatric institute, a young girl named Noon is tormented by nightmares that eventually start to bleed into reality. Placed under the care of a dedicated therapist known as the counselor, or Otto, Noon's treatment soon unravels into something far more. As she recounts her vivid nightly terrors, Otto realizes her dreams bear uncanny similarities to those of someone he loved dearly in his past. Thus begins a chilling journey where childhood fear collides with otherworldly darkness, drawing us deeper into Noon's verbal recollection of her journey in the nowhere and Otto's dangerous obsession. Today, we'll be taking a deep dive into the Little Nightmares podcast, The Sounds of Nightmares. We'll be learning more about Noon, her frightfully realistic nightmares, her counselor Otto, the nowhere, and the real world beyond called the counties. A couple of notes here before we begin. This video is basically a summary of many hours of the actual podcast. And if you want to know more details, you should definitely listen to the podcast. It's found on basically every podcast source. Go check it out. It's just many hours long. And since this story was given to us in the form of a podcast, there's very little official artwork or visuals for that matter, so I'll be using gameplay footage from Little Nightmares 1 and 2 in its stead. Chapter 1. The Workers in the Walls. Noon's story begins as she arrives at the institute. Timid, exhausted, and afraid, Otto conducts his first session and tries to comfort her with gentle reassurance and a jar of candy to earn her trust. But when Noon describes her nightmare, it's unlike anything he's heard before. In the dream, Noon was crawling inside the walls of a stone giant, a mechanical moving behemoth that was kept running by cogs and steam. She explores this giant by lurking in the walls, going up and down via staircases and shafts. She eventually sees a small hole cut out of the stone wall and peeks through it. The room on the other side is filled to the brim with glass jars, until someone enters, a huge man wearing a long coat and fishing hat. His face dripped as he watched her look through the wall. Noon has trouble remembering the moment, or even if the man had left the room or stayed. After continuing on at some point, she encounters the shadow-like children who are assumed to be the workers, scratching and hammering cogs to keep the giant running. Noon tries to stay away from these workers, but eventually she finds another small hole in the wall and looks through. As she looked into the crack, she saw a room filled with chains. 3 identical nun-like dresses freshly pressed and hanging by a bed, as well as a frail man chained up, whom she distinctly remembered the smell of, like rotting sausage. The vivid sensory details, the awful smell, and the oppressive presence make the nightmare feel scarily real to both of them. Noon is just grateful someone believes her, and she clings to Otto's reassurances, desperate for an end to these nightly terrors. Otto, for his part, is intrigued. Scent is almost never experienced in dreams, which suggests her mind might be touching an otherworldly realm. He conceals his excitement behind a gentle smile as he comforts her. Feeling tired, Noon stopped climbing and almost fell asleep while listening to the ticking within the giant. But all of a sudden, she saw another child, but this one with gooey hair, who gave her energy to climb down to talk to him. The child covered Noon's mouth before she could speak and pointed to another crack, revealing a workshop filled with half-finished projects, strange contraptions, and the woman who made them. The tall woman. Her face was equally young as she was old, her skin stretched back tightly to the point that only her eyes seemed human. Noon determined that this woman was the keeper of the stone giant and all that functioned to keep it alive. Eventually, Noon and the gooey-haired child make their way up a giant clock tower, climbing up its swinging pendulum only to arrive in a courtyard at the very top. All throughout these dreams, it seems like Noon's travel is blurred by time. Noon noticed hundreds of hanging cages with children in them there, and then the gooey-haired child starts to run. As he ran, the tall woman appeared out of nowhere, who summoned a chain from under her dress to capture him. She then spotted Noon, who became frozen with fear. As the tall woman headed her way, the only thing Noon could think about was who brought her to this place and why she was made to know so much about its secrets. Noon was horrified to see the tall woman's skin-tight face and blackened teeth, feeling as if the tall woman was hungry for something that swelled inside her. However, before the woman could do anything, she woke up. The counselor is doubtful of Noon's horrific dream, especially regarding the tall woman. Noon expresses that the workers, not the tall woman, scare her the most. She believes they represent the sickness inside her, like the aphids that killed her parents' flower. The counselor comforts her and inquires if she knows about mutual dreaming, where two people share the same dream. Noon is perplexed by this. The counselor then explains her perception of temperature and smell in her dreams may indicate that, and that he's only known one other person with the same ability. At the end of the session, he lets her pick out a candy and says, "Sweets for my sweet," before walking her back to her room. But later, as Otto clicks off his recorder in solitude, he can't stop thinking that Noon's case might be the key to unlocking an incredible secret. In the stillness after their session, there's a sense that both patient and doctor have stepped unknowingly toward a dark crossroads. Chapter 2. A Penance at the Bathhouse. The counselor reflects on his sessions with Noon, realizing that her descriptions of the Candleman match those of a figure his lost sister Cece once feared, whom she called the Ferryman. His obsession deepens as he rewinds their fourth session, determined to uncover the truth. During the session, Noon shares a joke she doesn't know the punchline to and speaks about her fascination with moths, how they're irresistibly drawn to light. When the counselor suggests she sees herself in them, she disagrees, saying she still feels trapped in darkness but longs to reach the light. This reminds her of her latest dream. In the dream, Noon finds herself on a rooftop overlooking an ocean, watching masked, robed figures emerge from fish-like boats and walk toward a lantern-lit marketplace. Their destination, a massive, eerie bathhouse. She meets a funny boy named Jester, who insists they stick together and keeps telling unfinished jokes, as if pieces of himself are missing. They navigate across narrow wooden planks, pathways too small for the swollen adults below, confirming that other children have come this way before. As they descend into an alleyway, Noon senses Jester's unease. He starts another joke. What happens to a stone that overcomes its greatest fear? But he never finishes it. Before she can follow him, Noon notices a familiar, indistinct figure watching her. He's impossible to describe, like a broken mirror or torn picture. Now, back in the session, the counselor, desperate for more details, persuades Noon to undergo hypnosis therapy. She reluctantly agrees. Under hypnosis, she finally sees the Candleman clearly. A towering figure in a filthy coat, his sagging wax-like face shifting beneath his hat, his slit-like eyes watching her. He has been present in every dream, waiting for her to open herself to the nowhere. But before she can learn more, she hears shouting and snaps out of it. Noon then resumes her story. She follows Jester into the bathhouse, where masked patrons bathe in steaming pools. The air reeks of bleach and rotting fish. As she hides, she sees a massive, skinless bather scrubbing himself, using Jester as a sponge. The boy sobs, struggling, but the bather keeps chanting,
"Divide the grime from the divine."
Horrified, Noon tries to flee, but the bathers notice her and close in, whispering,
"Cleanse her."
She scrambles through a storage room and reaches for an escape route, but the giant bather grabs her leg. Desperate, she smashes a jar of white liquid over him. The chemical melts his flesh, releasing a thick gas that engulfs the room in darkness. Instead of fear, Noon feels satisfaction. She realizes she doesn't want to be like a moth chasing light. She feels safe in the darkness. After that, she awakens from the dream unsettled. The counselor, puzzled by the vividness of her nightmares, suspects they might be manifestations of suppressed trauma. But he is especially disturbed by Noon's claim that she feels real presences in her dreams, as if she's not just imagining them, but sharing the experiences with others. Convinced that there's something more happening, he orders nightly experiments on Noon. She hesitates but agrees, believing that if she gets better, she can return to her family. As the session ends, the counselor suddenly recalls the missing joke's punchline. A stone that overcomes its greatest fear becomes a little boulder. For the first time, Noon laughs. The counselor rewards her with a piece of candy. As she takes it, he mutters ominously, "Sweets for my sweet." Chapter 3. The Theater of the Mind. The counselor then monitors Noon's sleep, but is horrified when one night she physically vanishes, her body sinking into the bed before snapping back. Confused and exhausted, he questions whether he hallucinated it due to sleep deprivation. His frustration deepens as he replays her cryptic words from their last session. The faraway drifts near, tread long, then sink deep. Two flows from one, and here is whole again. Determined to find answers, he begins analyzing her previous session. Otto admits that Noon's symptoms defy logic. Her dreams are too vivid, her vocabulary too advanced. But the most impossible part? She sees the same figure his beloved sister Cece once described, the ferryman. The idea that two unrelated people years apart could dream of the same entity disturbs him. It challenges all scientific reasoning, an echo of the radical theories that once ruined his professor's career. But Otto resists these thoughts, forcing himself to stay within the boundaries of logic. In her session, Noon speaks to her own reflection, treating it like an interview to explore her subconscious. She describes her new dream. She wakes in an endless parking lot, overwhelmed by an unbearable loneliness. A massive shopping mall stands before her, its grand entrance inviting her inside. As she steps in, lights flicker on one by one, and music plays through the speakers, as if the mall itself is greeting her. The mall itself is empty though, its shops closed with shadows of shelving and racks behind the glass. Suddenly, a voice over the loudspeaker announces a toy sale at Jujubee's Toys. Excited, Noon rushes inside. She finds old childhood toys, then toys she already owns, and finally, toys she's always wanted. Among them is a Lottie Potty doll, but something is off. It has black eyes and sickly yellow skin. She loses interest, realizing she has outgrown these things. As she sets the doll down, it suddenly leaks a thick black liquid. Feeling unsettled, Noon moves deeper into the store, but now all the dolls are gone. The speaker announces that Jujubee's Toys is closing. As she leaves, the store shuts down behind her, lights flickering out one by one. On the next floor, she enters a jewelry shop called Mademoiselle's Bijouterie. A red pendant catches her eye. It looks exactly like the one from the toy store's jewelry kit. The speaker offers it as a free gift to all girls 10 and under, so Noon takes it. As she prepares to leave, a second voice comes through the speaker. The voice warns, "Don't overdo it." The second insists, "One more prize can't hurt." A rolling rack of dresses suddenly appears before her. Among them is a familiar plaid dress, the one she wore when she first arrived at the county psychiatric institute. For the first time, Noon questions her reality. She asks her reflection, "Why is my real life mixing into my dreams?" The only answer she finds is unsettling. "They can see inside my head." A spinning light above her draws her to the third floor, a theater called Showtime's Patron, which is about to begin a screening. Inside, a sea of mannequins fills the velvet seats. She settles in as her favorite childhood movie, The Healing Horn, begins playing. But something is wrong. The scenes are out of order. The unicorn's horn is misshapen, and the evil prince's face is completely wrong. As she looks around, she suddenly smells the ocean. She isn't alone. The Candleman is sitting just a few seats away. His waxen face sags like melted skin again, and when he finally speaks, his voice sounds like it's underwater. His words are cryptic. The faraway drifts near, tread long, then sink deep. Two flows from one, and here is whole again. He repeats here over and over again, but before Noon can react, he vanishes. Now desperate to understand, she climbs into the projection booth, ignoring warnings from the speaker. Inside, she finds a pulsating, fleshy mass, a living projection machine. And it knows her real name. The cruel nickname kids at school called her. No one. As she tries to leave, the voice becomes frantic, pleading for her to stay. She realizes the mall is crying black liquid, oozing down the walls like tears. On the balcony above, the candleman points at her pendant. Noon rips it off and throws it into the darkness. As the dream collapses, the mall's voice cries out in despair. Don't take her! Not this one too! The counselor, disturbed by Noon's words, pressures her for answers, growing frustrated that she can't explain more. He briefly storms out, leaving Noon alone with the mirror. When he returns, he apologizes and gives her a pill for her headache. But something about her behavior unsettles him. She examines herself in the mirror, searching for a sore behind her ear, a mark she is certain proves she isn't truly cured. Otto sees nothing there. As their session ends, Noon asks herself one last question. Why is she having these dreams? Her only answer, the water sickness. Otto insists that's impossible. The sickness was wiped from her body, but Noon is convinced something still lingers inside her. Maybe it's the cure itself, she wonders. Panicked, she spirals into distress. Otto grabs her, whispering, "This time, I will protect you." As Noon drops the mirror, it shatters. Later that night, Otto rereads the research paper that ruined his professor's career. His professor believed science was wrong about the nature of reality. For centuries, humans believed Earth was the center of the universe. Then, they believed it was the sun. But what if they were wrong again? What if reality itself isn't what they think it is? And Otto dreads the answer. Episode 4: The Carnival of Secrets. The counselor begins questioning Noon's duality, believing she has two separate personas, an innocent child and a hardened traveler, both struggling for control. But something even more alarming has become clear. Her body isn't just changing in her dreams, it's physically disappearing. He plays back their session, determined to make sense of what is happening. Noon watches children celebrating in the reunion room, a place for patients ready to go home. She asks to join them, but the counselor reminds her that inpatients, like her, can't interact with outpatients. Instead, he brings her a slice of chocolate cake. She waves at the children through the glass, but they don't wave back. The counselor explains it isn't a window, it's a two-way mirror. She can see them, but they can't see her. As Noon eats, he carefully asks her about where she went last night, because he saw her body vanish. Noon is horrified, and she remembers nothing. She panics, demanding an explanation. People don't just disappear. The counselor, trying to calm her down, tells her that understanding this is crucial for her progress. If she trusts him, she'll get better, and eventually she'll be in the reunion room too. Later, the counselor straps Noon to a monitoring machine, this time while awake, to compare results. Noon hates it. It reminds her of past horrific medical experiments, doctors inserting tubes into her stomach. Despite her fear, she agrees to trust the process. Noon begins her latest nightmare. She finds herself in a dark void, spinning. Then suddenly, light, laughter, applause. She stumbles upon a group of friendly teenage performers in a traveling carnival, each with different talents: fire breathers, jugglers, tightrope walkers. And one boy, Rusty, invites her onto the Ferris wheel. But it's not just a ride. As they ascend, Noon realizes the carnival is on a ship, sailing through the sky. Rusty points out a massive tent, the Big Top. That's where he and his friends are forced to perform. Despite their smiles, they're terrified. Rusty hates performing, but they make him do it. Noon senses the pain behind his words, and she remembers the relentless spotlights when she was sick, how she wanted nothing more than to disappear. Then Rusty shares his plan. Tonight, during the performance, he and his friends will attempt something never done before. He asks Noon to help. She must watch for the man in the purple suit and yell a code word if she sees him. Noon agrees, and the secret phrase is Big Top. But when she asks if he's trying to escape the carnival, Rusty shakes his head. Not just the carnival, this whole rotten world. That night, the Big Top tent is packed. Noon sits in the best seat in the house, surrounded by grotesque, misshapen spectators with mushy, rotting food. The show begins. Fire breathers, jugglers, magicians, and for the first time, Noon forgets where she is. The magic is real. Then the final act. A tightrope appears in the darkness above, and Rusty steps onto it, and the audience goes silent. Noon suddenly feels a presence. She turns. Someone is in the empty seat behind her. The man in the purple suit. But he isn't alone. She can hear him breathing, and she can feel him breathing. He has 2 breaths. The man's empty face focuses on Rusty, but his puppet stares at Noon. The puppet isn't made of wood or plastic. It has hair, lumpy skin, and hollow, carved-out eyes. It glares at the spotlight above. Rusty reaches the middle of the rope. The crowd erupts in cheers. The puppet's face wrinkles with jealousy. It wants the attention for itself. Suddenly, the puppet turns to Noon and whispers, "Do you want to be part of the show?" Panicked, Noon remembers her job. She screams, "Big Top!" But her voice is drowned out by the roaring applause. Rusty keeps climbing past the tightrope and toward a tear in the tent's fabric. Noon looks back at the purple suit man. His body limp, and his puppet gone. She looks back up, and the puppet is now with Rusty. It waits for him in the shadows above. And Noon tries to scream again, but her breath is gone, and the dummy lunges. Noon stops her narration. Her panic attack spirals, and the counselor tries to calm her, desperate for answers. "Did Rusty escape?" he asks. Noon rips the wires from her head, and she can't breathe. She can't think. And then she collapses. The counselor rushes to wake her. After the session, Otto knows he's lost Noon's trust. She's hiding details now, avoiding descriptions. He blames her previous celebrity doctor for making her so secretive, anxious, and broken. But more than that, he finally accepts the truth. She isn't just dreaming. The places she sees, the bathhouse, the theater, the carnival, they're all real. They exist, not as separate realms, but as one twisted world. Noon calls it nowhere. But Otto is trapped on this side of the mirror, unable to see it for himself. He's desperate. If the ferryman can cross between worlds, so can he. Chapter 5. A Deluge of the Inevitable. The chapter opens with the counselor reflecting on the ferryman's role across history. Known to parapsychologists as the guardian at the threshold, he appears in myths across cultures as the entity that blocks passage to hidden worlds. The counselor fixates on the ferryman's cryptic words, repeating them like an obsession. Cross the sill, sink in a twinkling, cast aside the old sleep to sleep again anew. He believes the riddle confirms that the ferryman is guarding the entrance to nowhere, and that he must find a way inside. As the session begins, the counselor reveals something troubling. Noon has a small tumor on her brain, pressing against her amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for fear and emotions. While doctors insist it's benign, he's convinced it's anything but normal. The tumor could explain her heightened emotional state, but it doesn't explain everything she's witnessed. Despite his growing doubts, he chooses not to tell Noon yet, afraid it will push her into a spiral before he can uncover the truth about the nowhere and Cece. He revisits his former professor's controversial theories that to enter the quiddity of consciousness, what Noon calls nowhere, two things are needed: a gateway and a key. The key, his professor believed, was fear. The counselor suspects that Noon's tumor is something far more profound than a simple medical condition. It might be the very gateway he's been searching for. Later, Noon arrives and he tries to lift her mood by gifting her a new red chrysanthemum, replacing the one her parents left that withered away. She barely reacts. Instead, she finally agrees to talk about her parents, something she's avoided for weeks. But before she can, she hesitates, admitting that she feels like she's losing herself, forgetting who she really is. She doesn't know if she's the girl sitting in his office or the one wandering nowhere. The counselor assures her they are one and the same, but Noon cuts him off, angry that he's avoiding what she wants to talk about. She's tired. Most kids wake up from nightmares and go to their parents for comfort, but she wakes up just to relive them over and over in his office, all because he's chasing Cece. The counselor doesn't deny it. Instead, he tells her the only way to help her is to figure out where she goes when she sleeps. Frustrated, Noon strikes a deal. She'll do the session, but only if he promises not to attach any wires to her or use his machines. The counselor agrees. This session is different. Instead of testing her, he wants to test himself. He lays on a cot, blindfolded, attempting to enter a state of hypnagogia, a mental space between wakefulness and sleep, where he can fully absorb Noon's words. He instructs her to try and pull him into her world through her storytelling. Before they begin, Noon notices a photograph on his desk. It's Cece. She assumes she must be his daughter, but the counselor corrects her. She was his sister. Noon then begins her recounting. She found herself in a dark underground tunnel, following a thick stream of sludge. A group of children above shined lanterns down at her through storm drains, whispering in anticipation, "It's here. Finally here." A rumbling grew beneath them. It was coming. She continued forward and spotted a balloon-headed man in a filthy plastic suit, using a strange beeping device to search the water. He carried a sack over his shoulder. But as he moved, she realized it wasn't a sack at all. It was his own swollen, pulsating head as if filled with fluid. She pressed on, discovering a tiny cone-headed creature stuck in the sludge. It mimicked her movements, its wobbly body reminding her of a mushroom. She felt an immediate connection and nicknamed it a mushroom fairy. Before she could interact further, a net suddenly dropped down from a drain above, attempting to capture the tiny creature. A naughty child reached out, laughing, trying to snatch it. Without thinking, Noon hurled a brick at the child's arm, making her yelp in pain. The mushroom fairy dashed off, stopping briefly to look back at Noon, as if beckoning her to follow. It led her to a hidden hoarder's den filled with mountains of discarded trinkets and treasures. Among them, she spotted an old propeller cap, eerily out of place. And before she could investigate further, the balloon-headed man entered, dumping a pile of stolen valuables. His gadget beeped wildly. He had detected her presence. Noon held her breath as he removed his plastic suit, revealing his twisted, bony body. She realized with horror, he had become part of the sewer. The counselor interrupts her recounting, demanding more details, but Noon snaps at him. telling him to try, just like he always tells her. If she's doing her part, he should be doing his. She continues. The mushroom fairy attempted to escape through a small crack in the wall, but Noon was trapped. She clawed at the bricks, tearing them away just as the balloon-headed man reached for her. She barely squeezed through, escaping into darkness. The rumbling grew. The naughty children cheered above, watching from their drains. Something was coming. A wave of filthy black water roared through the tunnels. As it consumed her, she barely surfaced in time to see him. The Candleman. He floated on a broken door, watching her struggle. She demanded to know why he brought her to nowhere, what he wanted. His response: cross the sill, sink in a twinkling, cast aside the old sleep, to sleep again anew. When she asked why she should, he said, blight, not within, but without. Here all banes be set free. The counselor seethed. More riddles. But before he could spiral, Noon whispered, she understood. She believed that if she gave herself to the nowhere, she would no longer be sick. No more headaches, no more doctors, no more wires in her head. The counselor panicked. Noon was falling into the Candleman's grasp. He tried to snap her out of it, warning that the Candleman wasn't saving her. He was taking her. Noon didn't care. In fact, she told him Cece probably felt the same way. And that broke him. Furious, he stormed out, but not before muttering, I was only a boy. Later, still rattled, he returned, only to see Noon holding a medical scan with her name on it. She knew. The tumor. She demanded to know why he hadn't told her. The counselor coldly admitted he was waiting for the right time. But it was too late. She was already spiraling. Noon realized the Candleman had been right all along. She wasn't cured. She was rotting. The cure had given her the tumor. That day, she took 2 candies from his jar instead of 1. Sweets for the sweet, she whispered, voice trembling. As she left, she gave him one last message. She had seen the balloon-headed man staring in horror as the wave arrived. He wasn't like the naughty children above who cheered for destruction. He feared it. Both sides wanted what the other had, but could never truly obtain it. As the recording ends, the counselor reflects. He should not have told her about the tumor. Not like that. But his mind drifts elsewhere. He now understands. The key to the nowhere isn't a place in their world, it's inside the mind. And Noon's tumor is the gateway. Determined, he finishes his apparatus. And that night, he enters Noon's room as she sleeps, attaching the machine to her head, breaking his promise. As the device activates, he sees it. A vast, unnatural abyss, and then a shape. A silhouette splitting down the center. It opens. Light pours through. An eye. It sees him, and before he can process it, the machine explodes, and Noon is gone. Chapter 6. The Lonely Way. The chapter begins with the counselor breathing heavily, distressed as he listens to the recording of his final session with Noon. The story shifts back to earlier in the night, where the counselor is repairing the apparatus that exploded in the previous session. Although the monitor remains broken, the device itself is now functional enough to be used again. He has incorporated feedback resistors in hopes of maintaining a stable connection between himself and Noon while preventing interference from the figure he saw the previous night. However, he remains unsure if this modification will be enough to avoid another catastrophic explosion. Despite his efforts, Noon remains the most critical piece in this experiment, as she alone must send back a frequency from the other side. Unfortunately for him, Noon has become unreliable. 2 nights ago, when Noon had vanished once again, this time, she remained in the nowhere for the entire night. The counselor feared she might never return, yet she reappeared the next morning, materializing in the ward's south wing courtyard. Since her return, she has been confined to her room under constant watch. The counselor is left to question why she returned at all, especially after she had expressed trust in the ferryman's words. He suspects this is another attempt by the ferryman to toy with him, to remind him of his own powerlessness in the search for answers. As the counselor reflects, the moonlight highlights the painting of the Zahir's gaze, reminding him of his first session with Noon. He experiences a revelation. Just as the painting's hidden image depicts an astrolabe, a tool used to navigate time and space, Noon is his own guiding instrument. If he cannot reach the ferryman himself, then he will use Noon to bring the ferryman to him. The recording continues, revealing the counselor arriving at Noon's room. An employee stands guard, but the counselor instructs them to leave before unlocking the door himself. Noon, still angry and exhausted, refuses to acknowledge him, stating that she has no desire to speak with him. Despite this, the counselor insists that he is willing to listen to her, and Noon, frustrated, accuses him of never truly listening, of always manipulating her with cake and flowers in exchange for more information about the nowhere. Attempting to mend their fractured trust, the counselor expresses regret for not telling her about the tumor earlier. However, Noon sees through his words, knowing he is only trying to manipulate her once more. She recalls her mother's words, that withholding the truth does not change reality. The counselor counters, questioning whether withholding painful truths can sometimes be an act of mercy. He then attempts to reassure Noon that the tumor is benign, not life-threatening. But Noon is not interested in its severity. She is furious that he hid it from her when she had been telling him all along that something was inside her head. She demands the full truth, suspecting that the tumor is far more significant than he lets on. The counselor admits that while he does not know the tumor's true nature, he believes the body knows things before the conscious mind does. He argues that their work together has always been about understanding what the body is trying to communicate. The counselor then pivots back to the apparatus, claiming that it is the key to understanding everything. He explains that the device will allow their brains to connect, enabling him to look into the nowhere through Noon. If she would only trust him, he promises they can face her nightmares together. Noon, exhausted and desperate for relief, reluctantly agrees. The counselor's tone darkens as he assures her that she will sleep deeper than ever before. And later, they arrive at the session room where the apparatus awaits. Noon notices the metal caps the counselor holds. He explains that they will transmit electrical pulses into their brains, creating a synchronized connection. No machines will be inserted into her body, he promises. However, as she watches him prepare, doubt creeps in. She hesitates, then says that she has changed her mind. She no longer wants to proceed. The counselor dismisses her objection, stating that it is too late to turn back. He retrieves 3 pieces of candy from the jar, insisting they will calm her. Noon refuses, saying her stomach feels too ill. But the counselor's tone shifts. His demand is not a suggestion. Reluctantly, Noon eats the first piece of candy. As she begins narrating her recent dream, she describes a decaying room filled with mannequins and garments. Among them is a puppet impaled by rusty shears. The counselor listens intently, his interest piqued when Noon describes a yellow raincoat among the stored clothing. He demands to know if she saw anyone else in the room. Noon, growing drowsy from the candy, continues her story, detailing the puppet's sudden movement and its attempt to drag her down. She barely escapes, only to see a mannequin enter the room, a mannequin that moves in an eerily mechanical way. Noon struggles to stay awake, her words slowing. As she sinks deeper into sleep, the counselor whispers for her to let go completely. Now, in the threshold, Noon describes floating in a black mist, unsure of direction. She sees millions of stars and, eventually, a door. The counselor urges her to wait for him, but the door continues to drift closer to her. The door, she describes, is ancient. Its surface both solid and liquid, its frame wiggling as if alive. Instead of a doorknob, an eye is carved into its center. The counselor, now silent, has stopped typing. A knocking sound is heard, and Noon instinctively tells whoever it is on the other side to come in. She realizes, however, that she is the one outside the door. As it slowly opens, she whispers, "There you are." But it is not the counselor she sees. It is the Candleman. The counselor, panicked, demands that Noon stay away from the door. Noon asks the ferryman why he brought her to the nowhere. At the same time, the counselor demands answers, who the ferryman is and whether he took Cece. Noon's voice echoes the ferryman's cryptic reply. Only youth blooms, petals pure, but uprooted, spoils wait within. She sees a vast network of staircases, a pulsing red moon, and countless blinking eyes. As she gazes upon them, she feels that they approve of her. The counselor, desperate, pleads for the ferryman to let him in. The ferryman finally acknowledges him. A toe dipped, but to plunge you must be pushed. The door begins to change. Noon sees blurry images of children. The counselor yells, begging to know how to cross into the nowhere. The ferryman responds, "A quarter will be granted, the toll set in torments not yet paid." The counselor, furious, demands to know what the toll is. But the ferryman ignores him. Instead, he speaks to Noon. "Sleep. Sleep now, Ruth. Sleep into nowhere." The counselor watches helplessly as Noon steps through the door, disappearing into the abyss. Left alone, the counselor collapses into despair. He rages, destroying the room in frustration. When he finally regains his composure, he obsessively replays the ferryman's words. He vows to find another way to cross. He will pave a new path, one made of fear. He will decipher every tape, uncover every secret, and finally reach the nowhere. His thoughts are interrupted by a small boy, Ethan, sleepwalking into the room. The counselor watches him, realizing that something has changed. He smiles, telling Ethan they will dream together soon. Before sending him back to bed, he offers him a piece of candy, whispering, "Sweets for my sweet." Now, even after this grim ending, fans have been eager to connect the dots between the podcast and the wider Little Nightmares universe. And here are a few of the major theories. When Noon finds a small yellow raincoat in her dream, Otto's alarmed reaction suggests a deeper connection. Fans theorize that Cece might have been the original owner of that raincoat, possibly making her the girl in the yellow raincoat from Very Little Nightmares, or even Six from the main games. In other words, the podcast could be revealing the backstory of that iconic coat and tying Otto's sister directly into the game's lore. However, since Cece accepted the ferryman's offer to remain in the nowhere, her ultimate fate in that realm remains unknown. She might even be a character we encounter in a future story. So what becomes of Otto after the story ends? Some believe his obsession will lead him to become a future monster or antagonist in the Little Nightmares universe. The ferryman's parting words, "To plunge you must be pushed," suggest Otto might have to lose his sanity or humanity to cross over. If he does find a way to enter the nowhere, he might well transform into a horrific being himself, a fate that would fit the cycle of trauma and twisted innocence in this world. And interestingly, Otto means 8. And naming characters after numbers like 6 is a recurring motif in Little Nightmares. This subtle detail could hint that Otto's role in the saga is far from over. Noon's nightmares are filled with Easter eggs from the games, reinforcing that the podcast shares the same universe. She encounters a scurrying gnome, sees the grotesque guests feasting in the mall's dining hall, and even spots the ominous signal tower with its eye symbol watching her. And these hints suggest the Sounds of Nightmares is set shortly before the events of the games, setting the stage for things like the raincoat that the girl in the yellow raincoat and later 6 would come to wear. And with Little Nightmares 3 on the horizon, many are curious if the ferryman will make an appearance in the games, possibly tying this podcast's story directly into the next chapter of the franchise. Now, The Sounds of Nightmares delivers a harrowing tale that stands on its own as a psychological horror story, yet enriches the Little Nightmares universe with new depth. It's a bleak finale that perfectly suits the Little Nightmares ethos, one that offers no easy answers. Was Noon truly saved in the nowhere, or did she just trade one nightmare for another? Will Otto ever pay the toll to cross into that world, or is he doomed to languish in guilt and near madness? These lingering questions keep the story alive in our minds, because some mysteries aren't meant to be fully solved. In the end, there are no heroes riding to the rescue. Noon vanishes into the unknown, and Otto is left a ruined man, consumed by his fixation. In a dark, cautionary tale where innocence is devoured by darkness, and sometimes the only escape from one horror is to surrender to another. The ferryman's riddles still echo after the final tape clicks off, leaving us haunted and fascinated. This podcast weaves a spine-chilling tale that expands the lore of Little Nightmares while standing on its own. The emotional journey of Noon and Otto leaves us with plenty to ponder about the nature of innocence, sacrifice, and whether the ferryman offers true salvation or just exchanging one nightmare for another. Let me know your thoughts and theories down below in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. You know all the things. It really helps me in the end to let me know that I'm doing what you guys want to see. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching all the way to the very end. I will see you next time. Peace!